The work of the Institute really is to restore and rehydrate landscapes, bring back the processes that once operated in the Australian landscape that better manage surface and groundwater, and rebuild floodplains, rebuild catchments. We're working with communities to restore catchments at the landscape scale. And we're doing that with education, responding to the interest of landholders across the country, building their capacity and working with them to take action on the ground. The direct benefits of landscape rehydration are environmental. They're about rebuilding biodiversity, but they're also about agricultural productivity. So when you're rebuilding soil moisture, you're increasing productivity. Through increasing soil moisture, you're starting to rebuild soil health. When you're rebuilding soil health, when you're managing the land for soil health, then you're creating the conditions that can sequester carbon from the atmosphere and build soil carbon. Landscape rehydration at the catchment scale is a social process. It brings communities together. It empowers them to take action, to create change that makes their environment, that makes their futures safer, more resilient to climate change. We use the Mulloon Rehydration Initiative, the Mulloon Catchment Scale project as a model that we believe can be scaled up and rolled out across the country. We want to rehydrate the nation.
Where I'm working with about 23 landholders across 23,000 hectare Mulloon catchment, effectively to regenerate the catchment as a whole and rebuild its resilience and rehydrate the whole system as best we can. Well, the project really had its genesis back in 2005 with the original rehydration project that occurred just on Mulloon Creek Natural Farm's home farm. I think the Mulloon Rehydration Initiative has been quite groundbreaking because it is an example of genuine catchment scale landscape regeneration project which is community owned and community driven. Not only that, it's a fully benchmarked. We're able to, in the long term, monitor the outcomes of the project from an environmental, an economic and a social perspective. Rehydration isn't just about rebuilding structures, rebuilding the creek itself. It's also about rebuilding the natural landscape function in the system, rebuilding the carbon levels in the soil, increasing the biomass in general, increasing the biodiversity, rebuilding habitats. We've essentially re-established a landscape that is resilient to extremes of drought and extremes of flood. For example, in 2020, we had a 1 in 50 year flood, biggest event since 1974. And for the first time since European settlement, the creek didn't erode, it actually aggraded. What drives me is the people that I work with, grassroots people, landholders, community members. They're just genuine people that want to do exactly what I want to do, and that's rebuild the Australian landscape. Our scientists aren't just kind of aloof. They interact with the landholders. The landholders are happy to have the instrumentation on their properties.
The Mulloon Institute, the Mulloon Creek, our community of landholders, they all are part of what is a living laboratory. We're putting a lot of resources into making sure that not only have we got a good array and quantity of data, but it's also the quality of that data that we're getting. There's really not many projects in the world like this that are doing not only the range of monitoring and the scope of that monitoring. It is complex, but it's also about showing that we're invested in this for the long term. The monitoring is actually showing, as we get more information, there's all positives. Production has improved. water quality's improved, water quantity's improved. Native flora and fauna and all those environmental co-benefits have significantly improved. The system is rebuilding here, which is quite phenomenal. The principles of what we do can be applied anywhere across Australia, in fact, globally. The more that we can understand, based on the monitoring, based on good scientific data and analysis, and that helps us have greater confidence of how we adapt this to other regions.
We try and build the capacity of landholders to identify how water is moving in their landscape. People are hungry for it. If you drive across this landscape, you'll see there's gullies, there's incisions, there's erosion, there's a water cycle that's quite broken. It's up to all of us to repair those areas, and there's huge community buy-in. We've got to have landholders being empowered through education to use their own observation and understanding and make good decisions to take country forward. So I think it's the primary focus for me for how we begin to rebuild, a functional, productive agricultural landscape in Australia. When I see a functioning agricultural landscape in terms of water cycle and carbon cycle and perennial plants that are vigorous and productive, and people are able to manage them for profit, it fills me with a lot of joy.
We have, over a couple of hundred years, degraded a lot of our catchments right across the country. The degradation that we have has effectively broken the water cycle. The water cycle is a key aspect of how our climate works. We're seeing microclimate changes in those areas that we are doing this sort of work, so we can have a substantial impact on the whole climate. As different community groups and Landcare groups contacted us to come and run workshops, we saw, well, we need a national rehydration initiative. We see the National Rehydration Initiative as a community-based initiative working with catchment communities, Landcare groups. Well, the problem we see in the catchments exist almost right across Australia. We see governments investing in roads and rails and dams. I think they've got to be investing in our natural infrastructure, because our natural infrastructure is the best way to work towards minimising some of the effects that these natural disasters have. Combined, it's an opportunity between corporate Australia, government and the communities. There's a massive opportunity to accelerate this work for everybody's benefit.
And in the driest inhabited continent on the planet, we've got to particularly rehydrate this system. If we're talking about degradation and desertification, well, the reverse of that is rehydration and regeneration.
In 2021, with the release of the IPCC report and COP26, we saw the code red for the planet. We saw the international community coming together, acknowledging that we need to take action. For the future of our country, for our food and water security, it's important that we take this approach across the country, that we equip communities to take action, to rebuild and restore their landscapes.
Look, I think we want to inspire the change through example. The example of the Mulloon project, the example of the many other projects that are now actually coming to fruition throughout the country. The land and the water, and the biodiversity, all of these natural resources are effectively our natural capital. They are the basis of the human economy. If we degrade those, then we degrade the human economy. It's as simple as that.
I think when we start to see many more catchments being repaired and rehydrated and made resilient to all of our extremes in various parts of Australia, history will talk very well about the role that Tony Coote and this little farm had in fixing up Australia's landscapes.